Hey everybody, Tex Mex here. Thanks for joining me for another video. Today I'm doing something a little different. I'm going to be cooking a brisket. In a cooking style I like to call the lazy man's brisket, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But here I've got my firebox lit. I need one of these pits that has a separate firebox, and I have charcoal in there because charcoal is a good way to get your pit warmed up, and charcoal will burn longer and hotter than most wood. But once it's time to smoke, I'm going to be using this mesquite. Obviously, you can use other types of wood. I prefer mesquite for a nice Texas-style smoked brisket. So that's what we're going to do. In the old days, I probably would have stayed up all night and cooked brisket the good old-fashioned way. I'd have to put a water pan in there to keep it a little more humid, but tonight we're going to do it in an easy fashion. So I'm out here at my father-in-law's. He's the one that bought the brisket and asked me to prepare it. As you can see, we're kind of far out in the country. It's very beautiful. Sun's going down, so it's going to be not too long of a night. We'll probably get to go to bed about midnight. So let's go inside and start getting the meat prepared. One of the things that's going to make this a lazy man brisket is the fact that it's already trimmed. You see, this is a super trimmed beef brisket. It's a little over 8 pounds. And it's a smaller brisket, really, as far as briskets that I cook. But having it pre-trimmed makes it a little bit easier. It's mostly the flat. You see a little bit of the fat cap there on top. But this, like I said, it's a smaller brisket. And if you need to trim a brisket, there's obviously a lot of YouTube videos. There's one from Franklin's. He does it for, I think, a group of people at Texas A&M, and he really goes through his process of how he trims a brisket prior to smoking. I really recommend that video. I should probably put a link in my description. But here's the first step, is taking it out, and then we're going to dry it off. I get some paper towels, pat it off to get all the blood off of the surface. I'm not sure this is really necessary. It's something that I've seen other cooks do, and I do it with my steaks and my brisket before I put any sort of dry rub on there, assuming I'm going to use a dry rub. And it really seems to help to have the surface nice and dry to get that rub to take. So here I have, I've gone through it a couple of times, made sure it's nice and dry. You can still see there's a good chunk of fat cap on there, just not as much as an untrimmed brisket. Now, as far as the type of rub to use, there's a few different brands that I have used in the past. I try a new one for this particular brisket. It's our HEB brand. That's a type of grocery store we have around here. And this one's nice. It seems to have sea salt, black pepper, paprika, onion, garlic. It has a little bit of tenderizer that's from the papaya that a lot of different tenderizers use. I like it. One of the reasons I do like it, or I tried it this time, was because it doesn't have MSG. And not that I have anything against MSG, it just kind of gives me a headache, so I try not to use any brands that use it as an ingredient. So here you can see I'm putting a good healthy portion on there and rubbing it in. This is the bottom side of the brisket. Well, for me, I smoke them fat side up. Obviously, I think the intent is as the fat starts to melt slowly, as the meat warms up, that you want those juices dripping down onto the leaner meat. So at the end of the day, I will keep the fat side up. But you run that seasoning all over it, fat side and lean. I make sure even on the sides, you can see how lean that flat is. And as you can see, I've used a generous amount, put it all on there, rubbed it in. Let's see here, I think it's pretty much ready to go. Nope, one little spot there left, even on the sides. I make sure to get it fully coated. And I try to leave the meat seasoned until it gets up to room temperature before I put it on the smoker. You can always pull it out a couple of hours prior to smoking it and get it ready to go. Here, I think I only let it sit in this about 30 minutes before putting it on. And I used about half of the seasoning in that little jar for this one 8-pound brisket. So now we're back out at the pit. The coals are burning nice. There's very few that have a little bit of black left on them. At this point, I close the smoker and start letting it warm up. I want to get it, right now I don't mind warming it up to about 300 degrees, maybe a little more, just in the beginning so I can kind of clean it out. But then once I put the brisket in there, I will not let it go above 250 degrees. That's really the top end. I'm going to try to cook it at 225. Really, it's all about the smoking. I'm not going to stoke the fire or keep the fire amazingly hot. I'll be adding a little bit of wood at a time, just keeping the smoker going for a few hours. So here I start to choke it. I close well, I guess the side of the firebox that lets you scoop out all the ashes. And I'm choking some of the air out. Since I'm going to be smoking it, obviously you want to close the chimney quite a bit. Once it's smoking well, I'm only going to leave that open maybe about a quarter way. Here I can see it's probably at about 250, so it's right. Oh, and one of the things you need to remember when you're barbecuing is you need to make sure to hydrate. So here I have a nice bottle of Cazadores to help me hydrate, and I wish you all could be with me to have a glass of this delicious tequila alongside. But in everyone's honor, I'm going to start off cooking this brisket with one little shot. So thank you again for watching, and cheers to everyone. Oh, that stuff is really smooth. So here I'm trying to make sure that the temperature is about right. It is hotter than I need it to be, so I'm not putting the brisket on yet. While it's warm in there, it gives me a good chance to go ahead and clean the grills off a little bit. And I'm going to throw some hot dogs out for my kids. Um, I'm going to be up for a few hours while this thing smokes, but the rest of the family is going to end up going to bed. So just to feed the kids a little bit so they'd stop bugging me, I'm going to make sure to throw some hot dogs on there. And, there's no reason to waste that fire in the firebox. Many times when I cook a brisket, since I'm always doing it overnight for the following day, the pit that I light the night before, sometimes I will use to cook steaks or something else. So tonight, nothing that fancy. See, I'm going to start to choke it. I'm going to close the chimney a little bit more. I'm going to close off the side so it's not getting too much oxygen, because I do need to get that temperature down a little bit. However, one of the issues with that is that this is an older fire pit, and so the firebox is starting to burn out at the bottom. And now we're going to go back out and check our pit. I have the brisket with me. I think at this point I've got it down to the right temperature. Those hot dogs are there cooking close to the fire. It's pretty hot right next to the firebox. But I'm going to put the brisket further to the left. I want to keep it away from the firebox. I want indirect heat. Once again, the fat's going to be fat side up. And I'm going to put the point towards the firebox, since the point is the thickest part of the brisket, and the flat's going to be laying a little further away. So then I close it up, and this is the beginning of the makings of the Lazy Man's brisket. I can see the temperature there is probably just under 225, just getting there. And there I am. Now it's a little warm. I think it's over 250 or about 250. So this is where I start trying to make sure that I don't let it get too hot. And here is where you can see that the firebox is burning out. I think I turned off, I turned off the flashlight so you can see the embers burning in there. So no matter how much I want to choke the firebox, it's always going to get a little bit of oxygen through there, which is good. I mean, you need some oxygen going in, or else your fire is going to go out, especially when you're smoking over such a long period of time. But it is a little too warm, so what I do to make sure I don't let it get too hot is I open it up real quick just to let some of the heat out. I don't like doing it this way because you lose your smoke, but I think I also have to get access at those hot dogs. It looked pretty good at this point. The fastest way to cool it off is this way, but I would always recommend, if you need to cool it off quick, just open up your firebox and let the heat come out of that, and it'll start to cool off. And then just choke the smoker while you do that, and it won't get any hotter. So at this point, it should be about right. The temperature, from what I'm seeing there, is good. It's about 225, and it's time to make sure that it's smoking really well. I believe the charcoal I used had some mesquite in it, but as you can see, it's all burnt down. It's starting to cool off, which is what I need. And at this point, I'll start throwing on the bigger wood chunks, a few at a time. I never want to put too many. I don't let them flame up too much. And that's all about regulating the amount of oxygen getting into your firebox and the amount of smoke you're letting leave through your chimney. Because obviously you want to choke the chimney a little bit, because you want that smoke lingering there in the smoker as much as possible. Now, if you use smaller wood chips, I would recommend soaking them first. Having wet chips really does help in the smoking process. These are kind of larger chunks, so I don't worry too much about that. As you can see, I threw a few in there. let them start to really smoke up. I'm still keeping it relatively choked because I don't want that heat to go up. And I'm going to start now. You can see it's starting to smoke up, so I'm going to close it a little bit more. Obviously, you need some smoke getting out so oxygen can get in, but I want to keep that as smoky as possible. And here I come back and check it. At this point, I'm checking it about every 30 minutes at least. You can see it's smoking nicely, and as you can see, there's smoke coming out of the smoker, not just the chimney. And that's what I want to see. I want to see that there's so much smoke in there that it is just pouring out from all the edges. Now, as the charcoal starts to disappear and I am just burning wood, I'm going to have to start checking it more like every 15 to 20 minutes. And I'm doing this throughout the night. So here I'm back at it. It's starting to slow down a little bit. The smoke isn't as dense as I would like. The temperature is fine, so I go ahead and I start throwing some more wood in. And this is just the process. This is going to be the process for about 4 hours. That's really the minimum you want to do for the lazy man's brisket is about 4 hours of smoking, and then you can just wrap it up and throw it in the oven. So here I am just adding some more wood, and we'll be checking it again here in about another 20 minutes or so. Here we go. You can see the temperature is low. It is smoking nicely, and that's how I like. I'm keeping it like that almost constantly for those 4 hours, as much as I possibly can. And that's why I'm throwing wood in anywhere between every 15 minutes to every 30 minutes, just depending on how quickly your wood is burning and how much of a, how many coals you have left keeping the warmth up. Now, obviously, if you want, you can smoke for much longer than 4 hours. I would just recommend, if you're going over that you use a water pan because you need to keep the humidity up. That way your meat doesn't dry out. If you're only smoking it about 4 hours and if the brisket's 8 pounds or more, you should be fine. Now here's some aluminum foil. It's a large size aluminum foil because I need it to be larger than this pan. This is a big aluminum pan. This is just a very simple way of getting your brisket prepped for the next level. And the next level is putting it in the oven. So you're going to put enough aluminum foil in the pan and to fill in the pan basically, and then a foot or so out on each side, depending on the size of your brisket, because you're going to want that brisket to be completely wrapped up in that aluminum foil. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to center it in the pan, and it's interesting because you can still see that there's a lot of lights on in the kitchen right now. I'm trying to look at the clock. I think it says it's getting close to 11, so I think at that point a lot of the family's starting to go to bed. It's probably why I'm doing this now, because this is a kind of a noisy prospect, getting this thing ready. But I just go ahead and get it filled in the pan. Then you have those open sides that you're going to use to wrap up the brisket once you pull it off of the pit. And then the next step is to get the oven ready. We're going to preheat it to 225, and now I'm doing that now. It looks like it's about 11:30 at night. And you can see that it's starting to get darker in there because I'm turning the lights down as the family goes to bed. But I put it at 225 because that's the temperature you're going to want to cook it at overnight. My pit right now is just dropping under 225, and I'm out of wood. You can see it's not really smoking anymore. And at this point, I don't have a way to warm it up beyond the 225. So it's time to pull it off because I don't want it to cool off out there. Once you know your pit's not going to remain at 225, you need to get it off. And you can look at that brisket. It looks amazing at this point. It's got a nice bark to it. It's really smoked well. Without somebody helping you do this, it's going to have a big pair of tongs and a hard spatula. That sucker is steel, so it doesn't bend at all. I get it in there, nice and hot, and then go ahead, and before I even take it inside, I go ahead and wrap it up. And you want that aluminum foil on top wrapped down pretty tight, but the sides you want to cup up. So wrap it over so that the top is covered, and then pull the sides up. You're going to see me doing that there, right there. See, on that side I pull it up, And then the other side, I'm going to pull it up towards the top of the brisket because you don't want the liquid that's going to start. So all those juices are going to create a little pool of delicious juice inside of that, and you don't want it pouring out. And that's really what the pan is for, is just to keep anything that might pour out from getting into your oven. But hopefully the aluminum foil will keep it nice and keep all that juice right next to the meat. So it's ready to go. Get it in the oven. And at this point, it's about midnight. And it is my time to go to bed. So I set it for 8 hours. So that'll be a total of 12 hours that I've done this 8.5 pound brisket. 4 hours smoking and then 8 hours in the oven. So it's bedtime. I'm done for the night. This is the next morning. You can see it's bright outside. Now the brisket obviously turned off at 8 in the morning. At some point, if you need it to stay in there for a while, you can always keep it warm at about 170. Just turn down the oven. I think we're eating this at about 11 in the morning, so I just let it cool off a bit. It's still warm to the touch, but I haven't opened it yet. You don't want to be opening it or checking it. You want to keep it wrapped, just like with the smoker. Don't be opening it up. Keep that smoke in there. And when you wrap it, don't keep checking it. And right there, I just opened up one side a little bit, and I can already see all the delicious juice. And because this was a pre-trimmed brisket, there wasn't a lot of fat in there. So this juice I mean, it does have some fat, but it's not too much. I like to use the juice to put on top of the meat sometimes. Sometimes as I slice the brisket, I just put it back into the brisket juice. And if there's too much fat because I didn't trim enough of the cap off, I'll just use a spoon and try to skim some of the fat off the top. So you have mostly just that very tasty, beefy bouillon in there. And that's what this is. And oh boy, look at that brisket. Now, it sure did shrink a bit, but it looks amazing. Next step is starting to get everything else ready. Now, my father-in-law, although he's a man of German descent, does like his Mexican food, and he likes tortillas with his brisket. So these are some. We have a few different brands here in Texas that are. They're not fully cooked flour tortillas. You have to basically cook them on a flat pan or something of that sort. That's not greased or anything. That's just cast iron, hot and ready to go. Once it starts to bubble up, you push them down. That usually makes the bubbles a little bigger and start increasing around the tortilla. That helps them cook. Sometimes I'll spin it around a little bit on a stove like this that doesn't have gas because I don't know how even the heat is. And then just flip it over and cook it a little bit on the other side. And these are delicious. These not fully cooked tortillas, by cooking them yourself, they come out 1,000 times better than any sort of tortilla you can get from the store. Then it's just a matter of prepping what other type of sides you like with your brisket. I also bring hamburger buns because my oldest daughter likes to have her brisket on hamburger buns. Sometimes I get the smaller sweet Hawaiian rolls and make kind of sliders with them. Some people just eat it straight with some sausage on the side. Usually there's cut up white onion. Usually there's a jalapeno or two. Usually there's pickles as well. People like eating pickles with their brisket. So at this point I'm getting all that ready as well. Finished making a bunch of tortillas. And now my daughter, I brought her in as camera person to help me work. So my daughter's the cameraman right now. And I am grabbing the brisket. At this point, it's not too hot to hold. It is hot, but not terribly hot. And got to take it out and put it on the chopping block. Oh, what a delicious piece of meat. And so, let's see here. I'm slicing into it. I mean, that knife is not terribly sharp, let me tell you. My father-in-law's knives are usually dull. I have to sharpen them every time I go. And it's just slicing through that brisket like butter. So it's cooked perfectly in this sense that it keeps its shape. It doesn't just fall apart. But as you grab those slices out, you can just pull them into small pieces. They're so deliciously tender and juicy. And if I'm cutting a larger brisket for many family members, like I said, as I'm slicing it, sometimes I'll just put those slices back into the juice. So you're grabbing this delicious, juicy meat out. But here, I wanted just to show you all, so I grab a piece out so you can see that delicious flat. Oh yeah, it just pulls apart. Just a little bit. Oh, look at that. And I couldn't wait, so I started eating it, and my daughter's getting mad because she's sitting there with the camera as I'm starting to eat all the brisket. So thanks for watching, y'all. I hope you enjoyed my video. I hope maybe somebody attempts this brisket and that it comes out well for you as well. It is a delicious way to cook that meat, and it feeds a lot of people. And that day we ate it for lunch and dinner. And I thought I took some video of some tortillas, but I couldn't find it. But here's my daughter's. I just prepped up some chunks of brisket on there and some hamburger buns that she's about to consume. So thanks for watching, guys. Enjoy the brisket, and I'll see you in the next video.